You guys are different. So let's start with the story of the Skoolie, the bus, the deconstruction, the idea of even how you decided you guys wanted to get on the road.
So it really started back when Amaya was little, and we had a travel trailer camper, and we would go around the state of Iowa on our weekends and, hang out at campgrounds, explore a little bit. And then we just started to think, well, why do we do the same thing every trip?
These 3 years that you've been on the road and such a unique experience. So when you reflect back on the 12 years prior to that, how would you say that maybe your perspective has changed a little bit?
So the rental properties and then content creation. Okay. So our goal now, we're reaching out. Jim was in sales, so how we look at things now, and I was a photographer, so that was our history. So now our piece of advice that we always say is do it. If it's something that you've thought about enough that you're considering it, do it. What's the worst thing that can happen? That's what we talk about a lot and we've done consults with people, and we'll talk to people and do one-on-one coaching about taking off and hitting the road. So it's interesting to hear people and, what their reservations are and just tell them, go for it, do it.
Welcome to the Built for Growth podcast. Today's episode was thought-provoking and I would say incredibly inspiring. I had 3 others in the studio today with me. I had Jim and Kara, husband and wife, and their beautiful daughter, Amaya, who is 15 years old. And she has her own business. It's called Bus Beads that she started 3 years ago. And it's called Bus Beads because her family and her, they have 3 other boys, so it's a family of 6, decided to sell everything they own and buy a bus that was made to travel across the United States. They thought, well, we'll try this for a year and we'll see how it works out. And 3 years later, they're still going strong. So they share their journeys today, their struggles, and the interesting things of what it's like living on the road. So I think after this conversation, I'm probably going to head straight home and start convincing Johnny why we should sell everything and move into a bus and travel across the U.S. All jokes aside, I was very inspired. And I do think that at some point, I would like to also entertain something like this because it just sounds like such a unique way of living. And I'll say it again, I was incredibly inspired. So I hope that you enjoy the listen and remember whatever it is, you are built for it. Well, thank you so much for you guys being here today. I've been super excited about this. And to be honest, I know that I just threw this on you guys like a couple days ago, messaged you because I wasn't sure if you guys were even going to make it to Vegas and I didn't want to put pressure on you or just if you came here naturally. But I'll let everybody know how we met. So I was at Jellystone Zion with my kids and we just decided to stop in there on a road trip up to, we were going somewhere near Salt Lake City and back. And we ran into you guys and the common interests and actually the funny story. So Amaya, I'm going to introduce you first. So my daughter's name is Amaya and it's spelled Amaia. And I have yet to meet anybody else but you that has the same spelling as her name. So I was like, what a cool connection. So hi.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah. I have never ever met someone else with the same name spelled as mine. So
yeah.
It's cool.
Why did you guys decide to spell it with an I?
I think I was always looking for something different. Just looking, don't want to have the traditional name. And so, I remember my parents saying, she's never going to know how to spell her name and nobody's ever going to know how to spell it. But
yeah, no, you know what? That's exactly what I wanted to. I wanted something less traditional. I actually wanted to name Amaya something starting with an M. Because my mom's name is Michelle, my name's Miesha, and we're both the firstborn daughters. And I happen to have a firstborn daughter. And I was like, well, I think I want to find her, but I couldn't find a name that I liked. And I really liked the name Amaya. So I was like, well, maybe how could I tie it in? I was like, well, there's an I in my mom's name. There's an I in my name. Maybe if I just throw the I in there instead of the Y, it'll kind of have some significance. So that's how we ended up naming her Amaya. Just wanted to be a little different too. But speaking of different, you guys are different. So I have Kara to my right here and Jim across the way, mom and dad to Amaya. And I'm really excited to get into this with you. So I think, first of all, let's start with the story of the Skoolie, the bus, the deconstruction, the idea of even how you decided you guys wanted to get on the road. And then we'll get into your story, Amaya, too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it really started back when Amaya was little, and we had a travel trailer camper, and we would go around the state of Iowa on our weekends and, hang out at campgrounds, explore a little bit. And then we just started to think, well, why do we do the same thing every trip, right? Why is every weekend in Iowa? What if we took a 1-year trip and instead of staying in one place, we just took an RV and we traveled around the country? At the same time, Jim was reading a book, correct?
Yeah. Yep. I was reading about, the book was the 4-Hour Work Week. And it got me, it's kind of the first time in my life it got me thinking differently. Like, I don't have to do what the path that we were on, right? We were in corporate America. Like, she stayed home with the kids. I had a job. I traveled a lot. And it was just more that thought process of that we don't have to do it the way everybody else does. So it just got that was kind of what triggered just the discussions.
You talked about that 1-year trip,
yeah.
Right?
And then,
yes.
And then we started really we're like, can we do this? And we started looking into it. And then we found out we were pregnant with our 4th child, Hendrix. So we kind of stopped that discussion, ended up doing a 180, building a house building another house because we thought at the time we needed a bigger house because now we're a family of 6. And so we went ahead and we did that instead and advanced 5 years down the road.
Yeah, we just started to talk about, what if we would have taken this trip? We were talking about this, and are we always going to live with this regret if we didn't take the plunge and do it? And so I started looking online. I think I was looking at YouTube and watching all, bus builds and families doing this, and that changed my mind even more because originally it was a Class A or, some kind of camper. And then we came across the Skoolie world, and there was just something intriguing about it, being off grid, running off solar, having water, the community. And so we, at the time, Amaya was 12 years old and didn't feel like we had the time to spend 2 years building a bus. So a lot of families, they put in 2 years, 6 months, 9 months, whatever, but sometimes it goes on. And we were busy at that point in our life with activities and careers and decided to buy a bus already converted. So we started looking and, we were talking about the idea, but hadn't officially made that, decision. And a bus popped up one morning and I hit Jim and I'm like, I think I found our bus. This is a bus that can work for us. It was from a family of 6 that was selling it. They had 4 kids, similar in age, similar genders, I think, same genders. And so we decided that day to buy the bus. And a week later, Jim and I flew out to Salt Lake City, drove the bus back to Iowa, and that was the beginning of just really embracing and saying, okay, we're going to do this.
A couple other important things at the time too were, so it was during COVID. So we had gone from public school, me going to an office every day, to we had started homeschooling our kids and I was working remote. So as we were making that decision on the bus, our whole perspective changed too, on that I work remote, we homeschool the kids. There's nothing that ties us to this place.
We were
anymore.
sitting in Iowa in the middle of winter, questioning, why are we sitting here in the middle of Iowa in the winter when it's freezing cold? We can't go outside. We can't do these things. He's sitting upstairs working. I'm sitting inside with the kids. And we just, it was that idea of freedom and not having to be tied down in one place.
And back to that book, The 4-Hour Work Week, I had mentioned reading it and thinking differently. What really got me thinking differently about it too was they talked about mini retirements in the book. And we were at a point where our parents were both sets of our parents were getting to retirement ages. And we realized that they just couldn't do the things they used to be able to do anymore. And that was kind of our other thought, is that this mini retirement idea of let's take a year off in the middle of our life instead of waiting for the end. And let's do something when our whole family's together. And, that was really another big thing too, is we're just we could do this. We could take a year right now and make it up later in life. But this time with our kids. And I was learning it as our kids were growing older. Amaya was turning 12. And they say that as a parent, time flies, and it really does. And all of a sudden, all that leading up to the decision was if we don't do this now, we're always going to wish we did it, and we can do it now. Like all the things in the universe have aligned that we can do this. We just have to say we're doing it. And it was kind of weird. That was the hardest decision. But once we said we were doing it, it was weird. It was just everything else just came together.
Yeah.
So.
It was scary making the jump, but once we did, it was okay, now how are we going to execute? How are we going to make this happen? Right. Yeah. And in a matter of months, we made it happen.
So Amaya, what was going through your mind when your parents brought home a bus and were like, we're going to uproot everything and take all of you in this little tiny space? You're going to be sleeping on top of your brothers, basically. And that's what we're going to do.
I remember all my brothers were like perfectly fine with it. They're like, oh yeah, that sounds cool. And I was like, what? Like, wait, we're going to drive in a school bus and we're going to go travel the country and I have to leave my friends here in Iowa? And I was just like not very excited for it, but I was also excited for it. At the same time, like the first few months of the trip, I was like, what? And I was not super happy to be there. I was just, counting down the days until we got back home. And it was definitely an adjustment because they're like, Amaya, like, what do you guys think about just taking this bus and we're just gonna, go travel the country? And I'm like, it was...
You counted down the days.
Yeah, I did.
Yep.
So how long did it take you before you adjusted? Because we were speaking at Zion and I was picking your brain a little bit. I thought it was just so interesting, your whole story. And I can't wait to get to bus beats, but I think that's one of the best parts. So I'm going to save that for now. But you're about 5 months into this. And is that when you started to switch? And why?
Okay. So like the first 5 months, we did a lot of traveling. It was just hiking, traveling. And I was not great at appreciating it and like really appreciating what we were doing at the time. And I was like missing friends and I didn't have as many, like all of my friends were back home and I'm like, oh, they're hanging out with each other. I'm not even there right now. And then about 5 months in, we met a ton of different families at this place in Joshua Tree. And we also ended up going to an event called Skoolie Palooza, and I started making friends and I'm like, this is actually kind of cool. Like there is other people doing this. I'm not alone. Okay. And there were so many other people doing it too. So.
Yeah. So it was about connection for you.
Yes.
So you felt like you were just being unplugged from your life and everything you knew. And I think you're coming into your teenage years, right? So were you 12 when you left home or were you 13?
Yes, I was 12 when we left.
Yeah. So that's it. I mean, that's a difficult age because you're just starting to kind of spread your wings and plant yourself into like your routine. You're not as flexible with just wanting to pick up and probably move with your family across the world. You'd be like, I've got my friends and this is important. This is my life is here. Yeah. But you also lack the perspective of how valuable it will be, I think, at that age.
Yeah.
So you start making friends, you start this transition, and then what has that been like for you since then?
I feel like my mindset just keeps growing and growing, and you learn to appreciate like what you have, because sometimes you'll run into like hardships on the road. If we like break down in the bus or something and you realize like how great it really is when you're out traveling. And it started to change. I was like, whoa, a lot of people don't actually get to come and visit these things. Like I'm at the Grand Canyon right now. Some people would love to be in the same situation as I am right now. And instead of focusing on all the things you don't have, you have to focus on the things that you do have. And that's kind of what changed it for me.
I love that. It's
beautiful. I think those friends, right? And I think you've grown in the fact that I think you live by not caring what other people think, right?
I definitely did.
Yes. And you've really let that go. And I think with her bus speeds, it's really pushed her to be out of her comfort zone, put herself out there and truly not care, because she doesn't have these, maybe in a school and a peer system, right? You've got these different pressures. And I feel like it's just given her confidence. And
I think what you guys are doing is really incredible, and it's definitely going to matter to your kids someday. I think they're going to look back at this and say, I'm so glad that my parents did this, because what a unique opportunity, and the connection that you guys will have as a family, I anticipate will be only strengthened by doing something like this. So kudos to you guys. I don't know if you've ever read Hold On to Your Children, Hold On to Your Kids by Dr. Gabor Mate. He's a trauma specialist, a medical doctor, trauma specialist. And I'm always referring to him because I find him fascinating. I've read a lot of his books, but that one, which you're talking about, the peer attachment, it is so important for children to have family attachment and attachment to the parental roles. Yep. And when there's a lack of that, or they don't have it, they attach to the peers, because that's very important, to have some kind of attachment to survival. But when that happens, then we kind of lose our children. We don't really know how the outside or exterior is going to, navigate them But I feel like if you have a strong family bond, it's so important to have that first and foremost, and then everything else will come in line, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that was something we were noticing in our previous busy life was our kids, you know, they were at school or they were with their peers at sporting activities, and we weren't getting that quality family time that we were looking for. You know, it was Jim taking one kid to a tournament in this town, and I'm taking a kid to another tournament in another town, and we were missing that family togetherness.
During the week, there's practices, there's commitments. It's like, I feel like I would drive home from work and I would either get out of one car and into another car, or like I would, you know, pick up a kid and take off. And we just, you know, it'd be 9 o'clock at night, we'd all finally be together as a family. And that's where it was just kind of like, this isn't what makes us happy. We've followed this path that we think we're supposed to follow. And we're sitting here and we're like, this isn't what makes us happy. What makes us happy is experiences and spending time with our kids, and really just time in general, right? They say that's the currency of life, but like all our time was getting eaten up by doing these things that we thought we were supposed to do. And we just, I'm so glad we caught ourselves with enough time to like make up a lot of this time in the last 3 years, because I especially like, you know, I felt like I was missing out a lot. That was not what I envisioned when I became a parent, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, I think that there is this societal pressure to have your life shaped in a certain way, and these expectations. You know, you've got to have a big enough house, and you've got to drive a nice enough car, and you've got to work hard for this, and you've got to get your kids in all these sports, and you got to make sure they have an education. It's like, but sometimes we forget the most important piece of that is the connection with each other, and that's so hard to do in the way that society is structured for us to be quote unquote successful. And I think about that sometimes. I was even talking to my cousin recently who's struggling, she's struggling with depression. She's just having a really hard time, and she's always worked really hard, and her body's kind of giving out on her. And I just was like, well, what if you look at it the other way? Instead of working harder and harder and harder to try to maintain this, what if you simplified this? Like, what could you get rid of in your life to add more meaning? Right. What could you take out? What's all the fluff that you don't really need in order to be happy? And maybe we could simplify, or maybe she could simplify. And I think about that too, because you're talking about that, the sporting events. My kids are 6 and 4, and it's already the same thing. Oh, Daxton's got this practice. And sometimes like Johnny and I are just like high-fiving each other on the way, passing, in and out of these just states of being where we're so busy that we struggle to connect. And I have to work really hard at it. Wednesdays we have designated as family dinner night. And I do my very best to make sure that on Wednesdays we sit down as a family and we eat. Sometimes I'm able to sneak a few more times in there, but realistically it's very hard because we're working and we're moving and we're at the gym and then we're here and then I'm recording a podcast and he's, doing all the other things. So I know this is, I'm already talking about things that you guys have experience with, but I'm currently kind of in that struggle. And part of what inspired me to have you guys here today, and even just having the conversation with you guys at Jellystone and thinking about it it really got my wheels turning, because I wouldn't hesitate for a moment to buy a bus and take my kids. I think one of the things that I loved so much is from sun up to sundown, they were outside.
Yes.
They were playing, they were connecting, they weren't on the TV, they weren't on iPads. I'm pretty strict with that anyways, but I have to battle them on it all the time because there's not enough natural, stimulation for them outside. They're not always having groups of kids. Kids don't really play outside anymore these days, even at birthdays. It's like, would it be wrong of me to like tell people when they come to our kids' birthdays that they can't bring device? Like, would that be wrong? Like, but I don't like it because I know that as soon as one kid brings it out, they all just flock to it. I mean, it's by design to stimulate and give them a dopamine, hit. And so it's not their fault, but it's the design of the machine. And I'm like, I'm working so hard against the machine. Sometimes I think maybe that I just need to simplify what you guys what you guys did. So
no, and I mean that was definitely a big draw and something we've appreciated about this lifestyle is just the kids. They are, I mean, from the beginning, they were outside, they're building forts with friends, playing in the dirt, doing those things that I've always wanted my kids to do, right? So I think it forces the hand. And in talking about like friends and making this successful for Amaya, I mean, just the whole kid group, right? I mean, you saw it when we were at the Jellystone Zion. I mean, these kids got close and we got to know these families and we were there for a month together. And, first thing in the morning, Hendrix is headed right out the door and on his bike, not even getting dressed, hasn't brushed his hair, hasn't eaten breakfast, nothing, but he's doing those things that that I've always wanted my kid to do. It made me so happy in the mornings, freezing cold, and he's just trekking out and gone and out the door, and he'll come back and eat when he's hungry, So those moments, I think, with friends and just seeing the similarities and how they all live and connect in this way was pretty awesome. So
no, that's a dream. That would be a dream come true for me. I would love for nothing more for my kids to be out from sun up to sundown.
Yep.
So let's talk about how you guys navigate in this tiny space. So I'm also super curious about that. You've got 6 people in a bus. So how many sets of clothes do you have? Where do you keep them? How does laundry work? Obviously, you don't have laundry on site.
So we actually have a full-size washer and dryer in our bus.
So your bus was the bus that I didn't get to tour. I remember that. I think Johnny did, but I didn't get to go inside yours. But I've seen enough videos that I feel like I've been there and I saw it from the outside, but I don't remember what was going on and I couldn't get there. But
yes. Yep. So no, we have full-size washer and dryer, which for us, I think has made things just so much easier. We carry a ton of water. When we're not hooked up, we can still run our laundry off of solar. So with that being said, we don't have to carry as many clothes in that small space, right? I always feel like you're balancing between clothes and laundry. I mean, you can store so much and then you're doing laundry with so much. So everybody's got one drawer, basically the kids. They have one pull-out drawer. Maya, how much do you have in there?
I mean, I'm a teenage girl, so I have some clothes for sure. And I have 2 pillows in my bed. And my back pillow, I fill it with clothing. So it's just like one of those little things you can find another way to store stuff. Because
storage shack.
Yep. So she's got extra storage. But
And
how many shirts and pants do you think you've squeezed into your drawer?
I have I think I counted. I've got 30 shirts. Except some of them are a lot smaller, and I've learned how to fold them and store them very conveniently so they all fit in this one drawer, right? I don't know how, but it does, and it works. And
she's got the most.
I love thrifting.
Yeah.
And I think when you don't have the space, it just forces you to make decisions. Like if you're going to add something, you got to take something away. And I think I joke back to before we did the bus, right? I probably had over 100 t-shirts in my closet, of which I probably wore 5. You know what I mean? But I never got rid of them. I just kept adding. I think that's what a lot of people do. So now the big difference for us is we wear it for a while, but then I only might have space for 10 shirts. So I just have to, if I'm going to add a shirt, I have to get rid of one. And I don't know. And then
it makes it simpler, to be honest. Less choices, right? My kids, they wear black t-shirts most of the time, the boys. It's easy. They get up, they get dressed. They've got limited clothing to pick from. So I think it's Amaya and I that struggle more. And
hey, except we're still staying stylish in the school bus.
Yeah, we're trying.
You two, they share clothes a lot too.
So. There's a friend of mine who she gets her clothes sent to her and then she wears them and can send them back.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I don't know what it's called, but I thought that was interesting. It just made me think of you guys. Obviously, you're moving a lot, but I wonder if there was a way around it where if you're, you guys were how long were you at Jellystone for? Over a month?
That was
41 days.
A new record. We've never stayed somewhere
and
that
we were
long,
only going to stay there for 4 days, but kept extending because we were making friends and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask you about that. What is it a struggle for you though to leave your friends once you've made them?
Yes, for sure. When we had to leave Jellystone the other day, it was really sad. And I was like, dang, we made all these really great connections with all these people, except now we have to leave them. And what my mom has always said is it's not goodbye, it's see you later, because we're always planning ahead and trying to find when we're going to meet up with them again, because we meet so many amazing people. And we have to say bye, and I always miss them, but I know we'll see them again.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about full-time travelers too is it's just, if you think about that, everybody's traveling all over the place. You're crisscrossing all over the country all the time. So the more connections we make, the more opportunities that we have where we can meet up with other families. So it's weird that it's different in that in a house, you have the same neighbors and you play with all the time. Our backyard changes all the time, but then also I feel like if we're intentional enough and we pay attention, we find opportunities for them to we find opportunities for community all over the road just by the fact that the more people we meet, the more people we just cross paths with along the way, if that makes sense.
How do you, what was your main source of connection with staying connected with everybody? Because it was the flying circus bus.
Yes.
Right. So you guys knew of them before
through Instagram.
Yeah, okay.
We literally just messaged a few times. They saw that we were here and they're like, hey, we might come. And, we're like, absolutely, come on over. Let's hang out.
And we've done that to other families before too, where, the kids are the same age. We just try to connect. We just reach out on social media and we say, hey,
we're very intentional about making community a priority at this point. When we left in the bus, the first thing we did was drive to a Skoolie event. So they have these Skoolie events. UP. Yep, all the way, from Arizona to Florida to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, to Northwest Nomads, I guess. So we intentionally try to find community for the kids on the road. And these kids know now, they've got a pretty close friend group and they know they're going to see each other at Skoolie Swarm in Florida. They know they're going to see each other at Skoolie UP in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So they stay connected and they look forward to these connections. So we know this winter we're going to make the trek from Southern California to Florida because community is important. And the kids, this event is in February in Florida. Yes. And so we are going to make the trek so that we can be there for the kids to see their friends. So we're very intentional and we try to cross paths with people, and travel together and meet up together when we can. So.
What part of Florida? Because there's a pin. You guys have a reel that's pinned on your Instagram, and it looked to me like you guys are going out to the Keys.
Oh, that was the Keys.
Okay,
yes.
Yeah, I'm like, I know that really long bridge.
7 Mile Bridge.
7 Mile Bridge.
So I imagine that probably was off of last year's.
Yep, that was just we explored from the north all the way down to the Keys in Florida last year.
Swarm is in Melrose.
So that's in northern Florida.
Kind of.
So how does 1 year turn into 3?
So
great question.
That is a good question. No, I think when we initially took off, we thought 1 year would be enough time for us to try to take, financially be able to take a year off and do it and then go back to our old lives if we want to. And we always kind of thought, thinking worst case scenarios. Worst case scenario when we took off on the bus, and it was weird because we were always so scared of it, but really it's not that scary at the end of the day. It's like the worst thing that can happen if we take off and we hate what we're doing is we just go back, right? And we can go back whenever. Well, initially we thought for the kids we want to go back, but we were also hoping that if the kids liked it and we could continue doing it, it would be, we would just keep doing it because we like traveling. And so that's kind of what ended up happening. So we went from 1 year to about 6 months in when Amaya finally came on board and said she liked traveling. We said, let's just keep doing it. And then that's what kind of led to, then we got a dog. And then
so you didn't have your dog before you left?
No, we got the dog at an event actually.
Yep.
Skoolie.
Yeah. So that was right around the time too that I think part of getting the dog was that we were
the kids were bribing.
We negotiated
They were.
Yeah, they said we'll travel 2 years if we get a dog, and then so I think that happened.
And all of a sudden I'm like, all right, a dog seems easy right now.
I do not know how we convinced you guys still. We're already in this school bus. Now we've got a dog and a cat in the school bus with
dog.
6 people. It was tiny though when we got it.
Yeah, he was small and
what kind of dog is it?
He's a mix. He's a Catahoula leopard dog and lab and
he's not a small dog.
No, he's a big dog, but
yes, he is.
Good.
Okay, so then you got to ask the question because people are going to wonder, how do you afford to do something like this? Did you sell your house right off the bat?
Okay,
immediately. So you weren't planning on coming back to the house in a year. It's like, okay, if we come back, we'll just buy new.
We'll do something.
We knew that where we were living, we're like, we don't need to have this big of a house. And it was kind of that whole realization. We don't need all this stuff. We don't need a big house, a big yard to make us happy. We want time with our children. And that's when we sold everything, it was a perfect time because it was when everything was going crazy, right? So it was a good time for us to sell and not have anything to buy. So that helped fund our first year of traveling. And then we have a couple rental properties in Iowa that helped us make some income. But then what really changed it for us was I was initially working when we took off. And when all this was happening with us deciding to do it longer, we're like, people were just always very interested. Anywhere we went in the country, people come up to our bus, they want to know what's going on, why we live in a bus. It just intrigued them, right? So we were like, we could leverage that. What if we just start to share our story, maybe people will be interested. And if so, if we can inspire other people to travel, we thought that's a lot more purposeful of a meaning of life than what we were doing before, inspire others and get other families to connect more. And we're like, let's see if we can do it. And when I stepped away from my corporate job, it was weird because it gave us kind of time to think about what we wanted to do and how we could do it. And I think we initially just thought if people like our story and if people want to follow us, then if we can establish that, then we can kind of take it anywhere we want. We didn't know where we wanted to take it at the time, but that's kind of what triggered us. We're going to start sharing and just see what happens. Well, then we had a lot of people interested in us and started following us. And then we started getting opportunities from that. And now we make income from social media. So it was kind of a whole, I don't know, it wasn't really a roller coaster, but it was a gradual like change. And like we can sustain a way to make money while we travel, we can do it for as long as we want, and we can make a living out of just living, right? That's I think what we used to say was we could make a living out of just going out, living life, and having fun, and inspiring others to do the same thing and spend more time together, right? Versus get off your iPads, like you said, get outside, spend time together. So that's
What is your Instagram handle again? The
Hocking Adventure Bus.
The Hocking Adventure Bus. Yeah,
Yep.
Check that out because that was cool. I enjoyed that very much. Do you guys have a YouTube channel as well, or are you not?
Our goal out of the bat was to do YouTube, and we did like 3 videos, and it just became to be so cumbersome with trying to put all the footage together.
Yeah.
But this is one of these things always in the back of my mind is I would really like to give it a go again and just share more of our story, because the short form is great and it's fun and we can tell some of this, but I just feel like there's so much more to the story with the kids and what we're doing and the experiences and the places we see that I always want to share it. I want to, ultimately, that's our goal, inspire families to travel more, spend more time with their families. And I feel like the more we share, the more that all happens. So it's always in the back of my head. We'll see.
Yeah. It's also, there's so much, and I'm sure you have this as well. There's so much, you have all these ideas of things you can do, but like, we also don't want to go back to the life of all we do all day is work on our business and our brand, because the whole reason we did it was so we could spend more time together. So it is, we try to balance it. Like we try to work as hard as we can, but also make sure we always have that time together to go do experiences. So I feel like we keep saying, like, as time goes on, we're going to keep doing more things and get busier, but we also want to make sure that we're not missing out on this, short time period we have left with our kids. Amaya's 15. She's going to be in the next couple of years. She's going to be out going to do her own thing.
Talk about building a bus,
She's like counting down the days.
Yes.
Oh, you were telling me you wanted to get a short bus, right? Yeah.
Yes, and then I can make it my own space, and it is going to be. I'm very excited to convert my own short bus.
Do you think you'll probably still travel along with your family?
Yeah, probably for a while. They might try and chase me.
Yeah,
very possible.
I'm envisioning this caravan, and Amaya can, meet up, and then she'll also be like, "All right, I've had enough of you guys. I'm out of here."
Yep.
So that's perfect.
I'll just have the freedom to go wherever I want, and I can't wait for that.
I love it.
Yeah. Awesome.
So do you guys have standard jobs right now, or are you just making it off of social media and what you have in the bank?
Yep, basically that's it. So the rental properties and then content creation. Okay. So our goal now, we're reaching out. Jim was in sales, so how we look at things now, and I was a photographer. So that was our history. So now I focus on the content creation side. Jim focuses on, talking to brands, tourism boards, and we either do user-generated content. So we'll do stuff specific for somebody else's page, or we'll put it on our page, and that's how we make our living. So
that's so awesome. You guys are such a unique little family over here. Yep. I just feel like
trying to figure it out.
Okay, it's not easy, but it also is like, we also say like I'd rather bet on myself and sell our family. Like selling our family and compared to like selling a product is just so different to me. So it's hard, but it's also way more fulfilling.
It is. Yep.
Yeah, because you're not really selling anything actually.
Yeah.
You're just sharing. And I think that's the difference. There's some people are going to buy into it, but it's for the right reasons as opposed to just trying to pitch a product and get people to spend money. You guys are telling a story, and people like myself really are intrigued by this and very interested in it. So this whole process of you guys just selling your house, how quickly did that happen from you buy the bus? I know you guys were talking about it, but like, did you put the house up like the next day on the market? And how fast did that happen?
So when did we get the bus? Was it
We got the bus, we bought it March 1st of 2021, and we left July 26th of 2021. So about 4.5 months, and we had nothing ready. When we drove the bus back, we parked it, and we immediately basically just started the process. We started downsizing, we started getting our house ready to sell. We, I think, had it on the market within about a month and a half.
It took, we waited a little bit. We didn't tell people right away because we knew people were going to think we were crazy, right?
Yeah, what do you We are a little crazy.
Yeah,
and that's good. Crazy's good. Yeah, I mean, think. I mean, our family, they're supportive now.
Yeah, no
Do
one's
they ever
wondering.
fly to where you are and like just hang out with you guys or something on the
We
road?
met up with my parents and her mom in Florida.
Yep.
And then we said it's weird. I also say I feel like we get more quality time with them than we used to, because in our crazy lives before we might get them for a couple hours at a sporting event or something, but we were always busy. So now it's like we go in the summertime and we sit and we can stay with them for a couple of weeks and spend a lot more quality time together. So so I think they're, I'm sure I would love to see them more, and I'm sure the same with us, but they're also like, I feel like
Everybody's
they're pretty
busy.
supportive of what we've done. So
Yeah. So no, we finally announced it on social media, didn't we? I think that was our final, like we were quietly getting our house ready to sell because we were just, we were reluctant to tell our neighbors and what's everybody going to think. And so finally we just announced, okay, we're selling our house and
Going on the road.
I mean, and we sold our house we sold it the first day that we put it on the market. So that was great. And
This is
then we
final.
lined up, when the closing date was and when this event was, and tried to plan that out as much as possible. But it was a scurry then because we did changes to the bus. We repainted the bus and did some things in the bus, and then downsizing, right? Trying to sell everything. It was a lot. Jim was working, so I feel like I was home most of the time, just going through stuff as fast as I could. And
I just remember we kept just hauling stuff out of our house. There's so much, you realize when you really unload your house how much stuff you have, right? We had spent 5 years filling this house up with more stuff, and we're just like, we had 3 piles in our garage. It was like, get rid of, sell,
donate.
Yep. And then we had a small keep too, but most of it was like I think we picked what we needed
Was
in the
that
bus.
process hard to like let go of all your physical possessions?
I would say it was actually the most freeing experience that it felt so good. Every time I was getting rid of something, I just had this freeing of get rid of it. It's tying me down here in this house, right? If I have all these things, where am I going to put these things? So I just felt this weight load coming off every time something would go out the door that, I don't know. I was excited. We took one trip in the bus before we listed the house, right?
We took like a trial run. We're like, let's take a trip and make sure like this isn't just a complete mistake, right? Like that this goes okay. And we went to Texas. This was like a 15-hour drive in the bus, but it was
I think on that trip, it was the realization of looking around and looking at everything we had and thinking, what else do we need? I mean, we're on this trip right now. We packed all of our essential living stuff. What's back in our house that we really need right now? So it's trying to have that mentality of what do we need to survive and be happy, not what are we getting rid of? And that was the focus with the kids too, is here's your space. You guys choose what you want to bring into your space. And then we got rid of the things that they didn't want in that space. So I found it very freeing and enjoyable. And
What's the most expensive part of being on the road? Is it fuel? I think you mentioned food. I know your food bill's high. You have 6 people, but I mean, that would be high
anywhere
if you were at home.
Yeah.
So
I'd say for us and like everybody, we learned this early on and we researched this, but just for us, our bus mechanical issues have been like our biggest expense. Now, I'm not super handy. I don't know how to fix a lot of the things where a lot of people do, but just, when you think about a big bus like that, it's just expensive to fix. You have to take it to a diesel mechanic, and we've had a couple of major breakdowns. Now it's been running good for a while, but that's like the unknown expense that is added. But everything else that we always say this, like the food, all the other stuff is stuff we would have spent anyway. We still spend less on the road than we would have spent in our old house.
how does insurance on a bus like that compare to like property taxes and homeowners insurance? I mean, there's a lot of expenses you've cut by going on the road.
there is.
Right.
I mean, that's what we always say, mortgage and property taxes alone, you take that away, even on a big month of driving, we're still spending under that on our diesel and our utilities. I mean, we camp free a lot. We try to stay off grid as much as possible. So, I mean, diesel is really the biggest.
You guys just dry dock out
We do.
random places?
Yep.
Yeah.
Bureau of
Yeah,
Land
like right now
Management.
where we're staying right now, it's at a campground, but there's
Dry
no electricity and it's all dry camping. So,
But in the West especially, there's tons of free public land that are beautiful spots. And I think that was something we discovered our first year was you don't even have to pay to camp. You can go out to these remote, beautiful places, beautiful sunsets, as long as you're set up for it. So that's been the key to our success is having the solar, having the water, having the setup that our life doesn't really change if we're at a campground hooked up or if we're just out in the middle of nowhere.
Who plans where you guys are going?
Jim.
Me for the most part, yeah.
He's the lucky,
with some
the trip
feedback
planner.
from Caribbean. No, I try to kind of line out where we want to go, what we want to do, and So yeah, we spend a lot of time doing that, and now that we've kind of seen a lot of it now. I mean, so it's not, I think going forward, our goal is to not travel as hard and as fast, but to go slower and like, live more like school work, like, be more intentional, but then still save time to go out and do some of those adventures. Whereas like the first couple of years when we were kind of just traveling, we about every 3 days we're going from one thing to another thing because we wanted to see all the things. And what you realize when you start traveling the country is that there is so much cool stuff out there that
it's never ending.
Yeah, like you could see, you could do research forever. So it is hard to prioritize. And there's so many places that we always say, like, we have so many places left to see yet just in the United States that we haven't seen that we'd love to see, but I don't know if we'll make it to all of it or not. So,
I mean, like I said, it'll be never ending. I'm sure there'll be things that open and fun things to see. How long can you guys effectively boondock?
I'd say up to a couple weeks if we really want to be off grid.
If we're conservative, our biggest thing is water, right? So if we're conservative with our water, we can go as long as we want because we have solar. So our solar power every day, as long as there's sun, we're gonna charge and we're gonna have electricity and stuff that we can use. So then it's just a matter of how soon will we use our water. And then when you travel full time too, that you realize that like between gas stations, campgrounds, you just kind of, as I plan my route, I just always have to keep water and dumping the gray tanks and stuff all in mind, right? So just like you would, and you go to a campground and you take care of all that. If we're boondocking, I just have to find, and there's apps that help you with that say, hey, this gas station you can get water. This rest area has a dump station, or this campground you can dump and fill your tanks for $10 or whatever if you don't stay there. So we just have to think through that. But then, as long as we have that, usually when we go to boondock for a long time, we just make sure we have plenty of water and that we dump our tanks before we go. And then we just kind of go as long as we can. So.
Do you guys find that you get feeling a bit cramped in the space, or have you gotten used to it? I mean, imagine when you get sick of somebody, you want to see their face anymore, putting them on 6 feet or 10 feet on the other end of the bus sometimes probably doesn't feel. Yeah, she's over here like, we used to be younger brothers.
Oh my gosh. They could be pretty. They can be a lot sometimes. So I'll go on a walk every day, and then I can also go sit in our car and like call my friends or something. And I have noise canceling headphones, which are also very, very helpful in the bus. So.
We always say our goal is to not be in the bus, right? Like our goal, and I think when we're happiest as a family is when we're really out exploring and we're busy, and it's a sleeping quarters, right? It's a place that we can come back and we can sleep and we can make our food, but our ideal is that we're not spending all day in the bus.
How many hours a day do you think that you guys spend outside on average?
Ooh, it's such a variable. Yeah.
Also on the weather. Sometimes when it's cold, it's just cannot be outside if it's cold.
But you guys kind of chase the sun, so to speak. Yes. I mean, you chase the weather. So you go from north to south to kind of find that reasonable weather.
That's really where our travel planning comes in now, is we're just following that weather so that we can be outside. Because if you're in gray and clouds and rain and winter, that's not fun. Yesterday in Vegas, we were out for 8 hours? Just walking, nice. So those are our good days. And then we might have a down day where, everybody's catching up on school and we're doing more work stuff. And then the next day may be an adventure day. So we really try to mix it up just because we have things we have to get done too.
I don't know if you know this, but the average person today spends 90 to 95% of their life indoors.
Yes, the numbers are crazy.
I've seen some weird, crazy stats on even kids, like how often kids actually, how much time per day they spend outside. So I know we're way above that in the bus.
Less than incarcerated individuals on average.
No, it's crazy.
A lot of kids get less time outside than
and it's so important, right? I mean, this is one of our health.
People don't realize we don't get vitamin D through windows. You can't sit next to a window and get vitamin D, and it's also not the same for us visually. So our eyes are the only part of our brain that are outside, exterior, and it's meant to see the light from the sun with nothing else in front of it. Ideally, not even sunglasses, to really get out and get the benefits of it. But that's intriguing to me too. And I'm always trying to get my kids outside more. We have chickens, so I live on a half an acre with 3 chickens, and whether getting out in the morning to feed them or we play outside, and I try to do that as much as possible. But it seems so natural and easy with the lifestyle that you guys have, because of course, if there's not a lot keeping you inside, you're gonna want to go out, right? It's a small space intentionally. So it's like just enough. And the rest of the time, we're going to have the experiences living outside of this.
Yeah.
Yep.
No.
Yeah, one thing we've learned is like we've been stuck a couple times, or we spent some, like what we've learned is that living in a bus isn't really as much fun unless you're actually going and traveling around too, because like you know it's a tiny space. So if you're literally like in Iowa this year, we're for some family stuff, right? For 2 months we were parked in a parking lot, and that gets we wouldn't want to do that long term, right?
No.
And I think that's what has helped us be like, you know. We keep if we keep moving and we're traveling, but we're also like balancing it, it's great. But if we stay in one place for too long, then it wouldn't make sense to have a bus.
Yeah. But I think that's part of our fast travel is we're already looking forward to being in Florida and swimming in the Florida Springs and, you know, being back at the ocean and just that constant moving and following the destinations now that we know we've enjoyed, right? I think that's what's fun about heading around a second time across the United States is now we're picking different destinations. We're skipping places maybe that we went last time we don't care to go to. We're redoing some places that we visited and always adding more to the list.
In the first 5 months when I wasn't in the greatest mood about being like that we were traveling, I wasn't in the best mood like the first 5 months. But so this time I have learned like when we're going back around to appreciate it and have a lot more fun. And we've seen so many pretty places lately.
How do you feel like that's shaped your perspective? You're so young, I think, to have this experience. Like most kids will never get to have this. So what is unique in that? And I also think you were old enough when you left that you had a real solid taste of what it was like to not have that. So how maybe would you compare?
So wait, what was?
So if you had your life and your experiences with like going to school and being, stuck at home or not stuck at home. I'm sure you liked your life, but now at 15 years old, you have these 3 years that you've been on the road and such a unique experience. So when you reflect back on the 12 years prior to that, how would you say that maybe your perspective has changed a little bit? And how are you appreciating?
We've had a couple hard times. Like we had to be in Iowa for family stuff a couple times. And then we've had some breakdowns and I've realized that in order to appreciate the good times, you have to experience the bad times.
I think that's it. That's the key. You have a great head start, I think, on life. Let's talk about school. I think people are gonna wonder, how do you make sure that your kids, while you're on the road, are meeting the expectations? They know how to read, they know how to write, they know how to do math, they know the things that most people are going to consider important that children know the basics. So whose responsibility does that fall on, and how do you make sure you're doing it?
It's a family responsibility. I think Jim has taken some of it when I'm doing a lot of the editing and working stuff. But I will say when we left, I was very regimented in the fact that we have to get this done every day. We have to do our math. We have to do our language arts. We have to do our science, our history. And right away I was noticing, okay, we can't go do these adventures. We can't go do these things if we're going to sit home in the bus every day and focus on school for hours. And so over the last 3 years, we've really, I want to say, embraced more of an unschooling philosophy of we work school into our life, but we also feel that the experiences that we're having with our children far outweigh sitting home and studying in a textbook. And so, for example, on the East Coast, when we were on the East Coast, we were hitting all the museums, visiting Gettysburg and all of these places where you're seeing the actual base, the actual battlefields. So I just feel the experiences that they're getting in real life learning and education far outweigh that textbook. And so we feel it's important, and we're really good at getting our math done. But other things we let go on occasion, because I just feel like Amaya, for example, running her bus feeds business, developing a website, interacting with customers, creating these social media reels, that's the best experience in homeschooling that she could have. I'm not going to make her sit down and maybe mark out every lesson in her language arts book, because I would rather her focus on her business and some of these real life skills. But I feel like because of the way we do things, we can follow the interests of the kids, right? Like it's not her going to school. She would have never done what she's doing now had she been in school, because she would have just been doing what she's supposed to do. But
the
because she had a
workload would have been too
passion-
much at school, and it would have been about
Yep.
things that
Yeah.
weren't pertaining to you and your individual interests as a person. You know, I
Yeah.
think school is a business like anything else.
Right.
You know, government schools get funded, public schools get funded by the government to have
Yep.
your butt in the seat. And when you don't show up, you know, it's money out of
Yep.
their pocket. And so, but even by design, you know, the way that school was developed, public school is actually designed to create factory workers. So
Right.
people who
Yeah.
don't think for themselves, people who aren't 15 years old and having their own business, which I think is a great segue because I cannot wait to talk to you about this. I'm super excited to talk about your business. So Bus Beads is your business. And what I understand, I'll give it a little overview and then I want you to kind of tell me everything about it. But you started at what age?
I started it right before I turned 13.
Okay. So you start this business, you start Bus Beads, and were you just looking for something to kind of fill the time? Were you
Yes.
thinking that this was going to become something you were going to sell? Were you just making it for friends, your family? How did it
Okay,
start?
so first of all, I got some materials at Walmart and I just started making these things because I actually wanted to sell them at Skoolie Palooza. And I made them with a friend and sold some bracelets and I was like, actually, I really enjoy doing this. And then right after that event, we broke down for 61 days or something. Is that right?
Yeah.
And I was extremely bored. I'm like, what can I do to fill my time? And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start a business and I'm going to post about these bracelets and necklaces and creations I'm making and I'm going to see what I can do with it. And I kind of got it started in that time we were broken down. And then for about, I'd say a year, I didn't really do much with it. I just, you know, kind of sold some bracelets on the side. And then like about a year after starting it, I was like, you know what? I'm going to really commit myself to this and I'm going to see what I can do with this business. And I started posting like as much as I could and slowly my following started growing. I started getting more orders and I kept learning and experiencing and you know, you get all these supporters too and they're like, wow, this is so cool. And I'm like, yeah, this really is so cool and I'm enjoying this. And now here I am with, I think, 24,000 followers and I'm just trying to go with the flow and doing makes me happy because I enjoy doing this and I know it's teaching me so many different things and I really, really like doing it.
Well, I think like your mom said, this is homeschool in real life content, right? There's not very many 15-year-olds out there that have their own business. And I know that you're expanding with your website and you're learning as you go, but so correct me. So if I'm wrong, you went to Skoolie Palooza, is what we call it?
Yes.
Skoolie Palooza.
Yep.
And did you see other young entrepreneurs that were selling things there and it kind of planted the seed for you and inspired you?
There was like so many different kids, like whether it was a lemonade stand or people were selling cookies or people were, you know, selling rocks even. Like I remember all of like these different little stands and all these kids like coming up with these random little things to make. And I'm like, it's just such a creative community. And like my whole life, I have loved creating things and crafting and artsy stuff. I feel like a lot has played into it. I've always been very drawn to being an entrepreneur.
That's amazing. But that's a credit to you guys, though. That's so awesome that you as parents had this vision. And you think when you have a vision, you don't always know exactly how it's going to work out. But the idea is to give your kids the best of yourselves and the best that give them in life, right? Those best life skills. And I just think it's so amazing that she's 15 and doing this and, you know, finding the success that you have found. So what have you learned about business, right? Because it's one thing to make cute bracelets and, you know, collect a couple bucks when you go to these events, but you're really full on. I mean, and when we were at the at Jellystone Zion, you know, you got a table out and you laid everything out and we all looked at it and admired it. And I feel like I had the opportunity to really connect with you and ask you questions about how you were making it. And another unique part about your jewelry that I think is so fun is that sometimes you're collecting these pieces of your journey and incorporating that into your jewelry. So they believe it was a necklace we bought that had a little shark tooth in it.
Yes. So we went exploring with some friends at Peace River in Florida and we found a bunch of shark teeth and I just ended up wrapping them and making necklaces out of them. And then we went to Sanibel Island and I got a bunch of little shells and then I had a friend help me drill holes in them and then I wrapped those and made necklaces. And I try to make a lot of my creations are inspired by my travels. Like a couple months ago, I did this one launch called the Florida Springs launch and it had like a bunch of like blue jewel jewelry and like light blues inspired by the Florida Springs, which were like really pretty and like really touched. It was like very touching to me, and the colors there, it just all inspired me to make this one launch. And along the way, everything just keeps inspiring me, and sets I make, everything kind of plays into it.
Do you ever get tired of it?
Sometimes I get like exhausted, but then like if I was up late making orders, I'll be like uninspired or unmotivated sometimes, which is completely normal. But you just have to like remember why you started, and that helps just like motivate me. And I just find so much enjoyment in it overall.
You're so wise beyond your years. You know how long it takes people to figure that out? What you said about it being totally normal is very wise, because so many people think, what am I doing wrong? You know, I'm chasing happiness. I'm supposed to be happy all the time. And if I'm not happy, I'm doing it wrong. It's like, nope, I'll tell you what, I've been a world champion and a professional athlete for so long. And there's many, many, many times when I'm like, I hate this. Like, this is not fun right now. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. But it is reminding yourself and remembering why you do it. You know, I've been asked many times, you know, with fighters that are, you know, making their debut, or they've had a few fights or whatever it is. Like, what's your piece of advice if you were going to say something to them? And one thing I always say is, remember why you did this. Remember why you're doing it. It's because you want to, right?
Exactly.
So there's always a choice in it. You could always just not do it anymore, right? Not every moment of every journey, of every passion, of every pursuit is always supposed to be fun.
It's all part of the process.
What you said earlier, which was, you know, there has to be the low point so that you can appreciate the high. I think life would be boring if we lived on a high all the time.
Exactly, because then you wouldn't know how to appreciate like the good things.
So how many orders are you doing? What's your...
It depends. It always goes up and down. If I'm like really posting and trying at it, I'll probably get a couple orders a week. It's nothing crazy, but you know, I'm finding enjoyment in it. And like, I'm 15. It's one of the ways I can make money on the road. And you know, during the Christmas season especially, like I'll have more orders because people are buying gifts, and it's always up and down.
How do you decide your pricing?
I try to incorporate the materials, what I think it's worth, and I really try to make it affordable for people because I want to see people buying my bust beads. I want people to be wearing these. And so I don't try to make it anything crazy. I just try to think what it's worth to me.
Do you get other input in that? Do you ever talk to anybody else about like business strategy wise, or your parents, or do you just make that decision entirely yourself?
I think I just make it by myself at this point. I can be very independent.
I love it. No, I think I don't question that.
We do. We
We
always
used to
say,
give her
why you're way
unsolicited
too
advice,
cheap.
but
And
anymore though we are. It's just she literally has ran the whole thing, and that's what we tell people. Like she's done it pretty much all on her own. I mean,
we take her to the store and
yeah,
we take her to the post
office
office.
to the store, and
like,
otherwise it's almost like if we offer our help, again, back to the homeschool. Like, she wants to figure it out herself. She's 15. She can fail as many times as she wants now, and it's okay. And like, I want her to know that she can do that, because like, I don't feel like it hit me that you could do that until I was probably 40, right? Like, where it's like, you know, you fail. Like, keep trying and keep doing it, and like, put yourself out there and like, do what you said. Do what makes you happy.
Yeah.
So
even if it doesn't always make you happy, because it's not always supposed to make you happy, but ultimately, right? If it feels right, then do it.
No, it's been so good for her.
Gotta look at the bigger picture.
Do you have an LLC? Limited liability company, not yet.
No.
Okay,
No,
so
not yet.
that'll probably eventually become a next point for you. But I was just curious. I mean, I don't think that you need one.
We've talked about setting it up as she gets bigger and busier.
Yeah.
We should.
But no, she's got her own bank card and does all of that, which is really great. You know, she's managing her finances. We go shopping and she wants to buy her own clothes. She's independent, right? So, I mean, can't complain about that. But yeah.
So do you trade when you go shopping and you want to get new clothes, does that mean you're kind of like, oh, I've got to get rid of something?
Yes, sometimes. Or it's like, how can I make more space for this? But yeah, I'm always like, because my style will change sometimes. It's like, I always pretty much, I'd say 95% of my clothing is thrifted, because I am super into thrifting and not buying new clothing and just like reusing things, because I think it's better for the bank account and the environment. And I'm always finding new items I want, and I'm like, what could I get rid of? And
that's interesting. I'm with you. I'm not above going to a thrift store whatsoever. I always grew up that way too. And I think now I love to support small business.
Yes, small businesses too.
Yeah. So I'm always looking for clothing or things like that from small business. I'm just not really interested in name brands anymore, because the story behind it just doesn't appeal to me. And I'm not really looking at the things so much anymore. I'm looking at the meaning and the purpose that it fills for me.
Right.
I I just don't care so much about, I don't care. I mean, not that I have nothing that's name brand, but a lot of times it's a gift. Just, that's nice. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when I go shopping, I'm not looking for that, because I have said this before, not to you guys though, but when you go and you shop big brand, you're buying, these millionaires another Ferrari.
Yeah.
It's like when you shop small business,
Yeah.
you're buying something important and meaningful to that person or to that family. You're buying a kid a new bike for Christmas. It's like, that's
Absolutely.
purposeful.
You're supporting someone's dream too.
Yes.
Yeah, the American dream. All right. So do you have any plans otherwise with this business? And maybe how has it expanded? Did you start with just bracelets? You do bracelets, necklaces, and
Yes. I just started with bracelets and kind of sold them. And then I keep getting into new things. And now I've made anklets, rings, necklaces, earrings even. And I was just thinking about this last night, but I would love to make more jewelry like with rocks. And I would love to make like metal rings. And if I could, I need to do more research on how to do it. But I feel like I could make these metal rings and I could put like rocks from these cool places. And yeah, I'm always thinking of new things to do. And it's just about executing them.
yeah. So you're a visionary.
Yes.
So you've got some things.
So many ideas, so little.
How about Amaya? You should mention like your network of other businesses that you partner with, and then also social media in general, how it's opened the door for you for other social media opportunities.
Just your social media
What is
experience
Skoolie
in general.
Skoolie UP, I do a little bit of social media managing, so I post some things for them. And it's one of the events we actually go to every year. So then I help take a bunch of videos and then, post content and do some other things.
Yep. But I think the whole content creation, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that has been another huge skill. In addition to just creating bracelets and jewelry, she now has this skill as an influencer and, creating social media content that, that's a skill that's up and growing and she can help people with. And
Promoting it all is definitely a big part of it.
Yes. I mean, she makes the bracelets, but she has to, tell people about this. And so, so now she's helping another page with creating content for them. So I think that's just one of those skills that, I think is going to help her no matter what she does and where she ends up. I think social media is a big part of it.
Yeah. So it's just at Busbeads on social media.
Yes.
Is it the same for your website?
My website is pinned in my Instagram bio, and then I think it's called Busbead, but then there's like a link. I don't know the exact.
Oh, that's right. It's clickable.
Yep. BuzzFeed.
Exactly.
It's on She's on Shopify.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah.
Etsy or anything like that? We'll see what the future holds.
Exactly.
Never
So
know.
how many hours a week do you think that you spend on your business? I know you just kind of like up and down, but like on an average.
Yeah, I would say a couple hours a day when you put into like editing videos, then making bracelets, let's say shopping trips, like picking up more supplies and materials, or post office. I'd say like 2 to 3 hours a day if I'm like very productive with it. But like some days we'll be out traveling, so then I'll just like stock up and like do a lot more on those rest days and just have a to-do list and try to finish everything on it.
So you've got you're about right on the 4 hour, maybe the 4 hour work week.
Yeah, right.
She's on the right track here, Dad.
She's on the day right.
On the right
forward
track.
day.
Yeah. How many hours a week do you guys spend working?
I have no idea on that number, but probably a lot more than I think. Because I fit it into
Pockets of
time. And I've been used to that in the past, just when he worked and I stayed home with the kids. But, we work, we think differently about things. We want to go out. We stay home on the weekends and we'll try and get work done when everybody else is out busy, right? It's those weekends, everybody goes out, does the hikes, goes to Las Vegas.
Right.
So we try to avoid and do the opposite of what everybody else does and work at night. So I don't know. And we're still over 40, 60
I'd say
hours
Kara
a
definitely
week.
it's a full-time job, and then me not full-time, but then the other thing that like you have to understand when we're traveling full-time is we're with our kids 24/7, right? So we don't get rid of them for half the day to go to school. They don't go to sports. Like they're literally, we cook 3 meals a day. We homeschool them. We're with them. We have to entertain them. They entertain themselves, but just that whole, like I'm more of a stay-at-home dad now than probably anything. And then she does a lot of the work, and then I try to fit stuff in too when I can. So like,
and we rotate. So it's a juggling. It's difficult to do that, right? And then the balance of wanting to do the things, but we still still have a lot of work to do, and it still is very time consuming. So I wouldn't say that we're working any less. It's just a lot more flexible, and it's on our schedule, which is really what makes it work.
I think you guys have answered so many questions for me. I'm so inspired by you guys, but I do want to ask maybe just the best and the worst part of being on the road, for each of you, kind of, what is it? Because there's always going to be, we've talked a lot about pros, and I know you've talked about breaking down, but is there anything else that people maybe should just be forewarned about, and or any advice you have to somebody who's contemplating? Maybe they're listening to this and like, I never thought about that before, or I've been thinking about it. What would they need to know?
Our piece of advice that we always say is do it. If it's something that you've thought about enough that you're considering it, do it. What's the worst thing that can happen? That's what we talk about a lot, is what's the worst case scenario here and what happens. And we've done consults with people, and we'll talk to people and do one-on-one coaching about taking off and hitting the road. So it's interesting to hear people and, what their reservations are, and just tell them, go for it, do it.
I feel like that's just the do it, right? Like, so many people have so many great ideas and they just don't. The hardest, but also easiest decision to make is just saying, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it. And that's what was hard for us, is we just didn't do that. But then once we did it, it was like, that was way easier than we made it. Like, we just said we're going to do it. And again, we're like, worst case scenario, you go back to how it was before. But so I don't know that someone needs to take it as extreme as we do, is let's sell everything and go take a trip. But if your goal is you want to take your family somewhere, like, time flies. So do it. Do it. Go take that trip. Do that thing, because you only live once. And I think you'll value those experiences that you've had way more than anything else. And that's like, I think when I think about the highs, like, we have had the coolest experiences, I think, that I could never even imagine that we would have, and we got to experience them all as a family. We've also had some extreme lows, and that also shapes us. And it, like, even our kids, right? You talk about resiliency and like having to deal with like spending the night in the mechanic parking lot, or like, it's like last year in Florida, like that video you saw of us going to the Keys. We had just got done being broke down for 20 days, stuck behind a truck stop parked while a mechanic fixed our issue. And then from there, we went from stuck in Florida to like driving and parking right on the ocean in the Keys for a week. And it was like the most incredible experience. And it's like, that's what when I talk to people about why we love it so much, it's our old life was we were very complacent. It was very predictable, like same thing every weekend. And like now it's just always different. It just makes it that much more fun. And it makes me, I'm going to appreciate it so much more. When the kids are grown and me and Kara are just by ourselves someday, I'm going to be like, we did it. Like, we did this experience. I don't have to ever live with the regret of not doing it. And
it's still crazy to look back sometimes, like, wow, we actually did that. Like, we really sold everything we owned.
How long do you guys think you're going to do it for?
Forever. No, I mean, like, there's really we don't feel the need at this point to have a house. We've talked about maybe we have a plot of land that we can have a base, but the idea of following the weather and the ideal places just is so appealing to me. I don't want to be stuck. I feel like now it's that feeling of, I don't want to be stuck at one place all the time. That's just that's scary. But back to like highs and lows, right? We always say we've had the highest of highs and we've had the lowest of lows in bus life. The experiences and the places that we've seen are just incredible. The springs, the mountains, the ocean, and just those experiences with kids. But then the breakdowns and, some of those are rough. Those are, definitely rough. But we go back to adaptability. We said from the beginning, this is going to teach everybody how to be adaptable.
Where do you guys stay when it breaks down?
In the bus.
Well, if we can. Our ideal
like,
world
while they're
is,
working on the engine. Oh my gosh, our RV's in getting worked on right now too. Because we got home and there was something with like the lifters and hitting, and there was metal in the oil. Okay. That's not great. No. Luckily it's under warranty. We love traveling in our RV too, but if that's your home and there's gotta be a mechanic working on it, I never thought about that.
We've had to stay in a tent one time, I think, at a campground. And then
we've done a cabin. I mean, it's our ideal situation is to stay in the mechanic's parking lot. Like, how crazy is that? But then we have our house.
And you've actually done that. Like, there's been mechanics that are just like,
times.
Look,
there's been some before that we've been a couple places where you ask and they say they can't for whatever reason. That's when we've had to adjust.
We load everything up into our car and we have to figure out where we're gonna go. So that can be rough. But as you said, like cranking up, remember I was thinking our transmission was getting swapped out when we were in, was that California?
Yeah, we're sitting in our
that.
bus, and all of a sudden our bus started raising up because
Like the back of it.
He was getting ready to fix it the next morning. So at the end of the day, he just put it up on jacks, and our bus just
like
went
2 feet up in the
For
air
the whole
and,
night.
and then
Yeah.
he just left.
Yeah,
He didn't say anything, and we're just
Well, we
like,
still
Did
had
you
our
know you
bus.
guys were in there, or did you just
Yeah.
think about
yeah,
it?
we were in there.
He was in there. We walk outside, we look, and we're like, all right, I guess
We're
this is
jacked.
what
We're sleeping.
Guess we're getting a transmission tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I hope that you guys slept with your heads at the
I know. I think we
right?
were like
Yeah.
trying to, figure all that out. But it's adaptability. It's an adventure, and it's all about how you deal with the obstacles that you face. That's what we
Yeah.
always say. You're going to run into obstacles in your life. I mean, difficulties, struggles, whatever it is, but how do you handle that? How
Yeah.
do you adapt to those changes? And, do you overcome them and move on, or do you sit and sulk, talk about how bad life is? Because it is what you make of it.
It's so good. I almost feel bad to ask one more question because I'm like, that was perfect closing, but I have one more. The electronics kids, TV screens, iPads, how
Yeah.
difficult is that? So break down all that your kids' ages for me. That would be my one worry, is that we would leave and while we're driving, my kids would be like on their iPads or watching TV, and we get there and that's what they want to continue to do. How do you navigate it?
We've had this issue. So when we got stuck in Iowa dealing with family issues this past summer, and we were there and we were using technology as a babysitter way more than we like to. When we got to the Jellystone at Zion, actually, we said, iPads are gone. Like, technology is gone. You guys are in a perfect place with people around, activities going. Now is our perfect time. So we took everything away cold turkey when we were there. So we're just now adjusting. So Amaya's 15. She's got a phone. That was, she's got a business. That was a hard, not necessarily into a phone, but she's responsible. Beckett's 13. He's got a computer and an iPad. Stellan's 10, has an iPad, and Hendrix is 7 and has an iPad. So we're working on this now, but we have screen times. I mean, that's our biggest. What we've learned is it can't be a discussion, right? A parent has to have a clear expectation of this is what you get. Otherwise, it turns into an argument of I want to be on this, or so we're working on this still. But I think that clear guideline of you get, say 2 hours for today and however you use that, or, but yeah, I feel like that's a struggle for anybody. And
it's hard too, because you think about it's almost, I compare it to food, and it's like if you put a cookie next to like a vegetable and you tell the kid just pick one, like how many times do they pick the cookie, right? And it's kind of like the same with an iPad. An iPad's such an easy, like quick fix of entertainment, but it's like, if you don't give them the choice, they're going to go find other things to do. And then that was what was great about that Jellystone. What we talked about is all of a sudden after a couple of days, our kids are we're not pushing them out the door. They're going out on their own.
Adaptable.
yes.
Yeah. And that was like,
it opens them to those new. So that was reaffirmation for us of, when they don't have the option, they are going to be a heck of a lot more creative, and it's going to force them to go out and play in the dirt or get out the colors or get out the Legos. But that can be a challenge when we're constantly traveling and we're going to new places. You don't always know what you're getting into. What's the campsite like? Should the kids be running around on their own? So it does get challenging, but
I love that. I think it's something I'm definitely interested in. I think I'll probably most likely pursue this at some point. I think I've already got Johnny convinced on just taking our little RV and just doing like 3 months, right? And just
Perfect
let's
trial
just
run.
see.
It is.
Let's just see what it is. I mean, this is a lot smaller than what we would have if we moved and did this full time, but it'll give us a good taste of what it's like to be motivated to be outside and enjoying your environment as opposed to being inside, and really taking that perspective and just kind of trying to feel what it's like. So, well, thank you guys so much. You have really inspired me and my family, and I'm going to continue to work on Johnny because I'm that passion pursuit crazy kind of person. It's like, let's do it right now. And he's like, hold on, we got to, dot our I's and cross our T's. So I'm thankful for his logic, but hopefully I'll be able to work on him a little bit, and then we'll be meeting up at Skoolie Paloozas.
I know, right?
That'd
That'd be amazing. Be a good way to start.
I love it. Thank you guys. And
Thank
Amaya,
you.
thank you so much for joining us.
Of course.
Yes, sharing your story about your business. It was really inspirational.